Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Happy morning, afternoon, wherever you're at. I'm really excited to be here. So currently I work for the FinOps Foundation. Prior to coming here, I worked for an education company called Pearson. So if you've maybe taken your AWS certification on a platform called View, that was a Pearson product. Many of your children have probably also used a lot of their tools in their courseware. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about FinOps policy and governance and how you can really power that up and power up many of your capabilities by automating the enforcement behind it. Before I kind of dive in, I just want to level set. If you haven't heard of FinOps, it's really an evolving cloud financial management discipline. It's a cultural practice that enables the organization to get the maximum business value. What we're focused on is helping engineers, finance, technology, and business teams come together and to collaborate and being able to make data-driven spend decisions. It's really bringing that like financial accountability to this new variable spend model. It's enabling those distributed teams, engineering business, to make a real-time trade-off between spend, cost, and quality of their cloud architects. And at the end of the day, making sure we're making the best investment decisions that can possibly be made. If kind of backing up a little bit, like I said, before coming to the foundation, I was a practitioner, and what I have noticed in the last 5 years is there's been a major like shift in this movement from being kind of reactive, like, well, I get my bill, I charge my bill to IT, a couple months go by, people start to see it on the P&L, they start asking questions, right? And then we started moving into doing some more like, well, let's put anomaly alerts on things. Let's compare actuals versus forecasting. So we're getting closer and closer, but we've still been in kind of a reactive mode. But what I've really seen is the shift in the industry to be more proactive. And so, really enabling engineers through more education programs, setting up governments and policies, and ensuring there is those proper guardrails, which is particularly important when you're like working in a large enterprise. So again, when I first started in FinOps, we were really focused on how do we combat this overspend, right? We did a lot of lift and shifts. We closed, I think it was close to 90 some data centers. And we were also trying to meet the demands of what was going on in COVID and education, and more of our platforms were being used online. We needed to get them migrated very quickly. And so we kind of came into doing FinOps. We're at a tipping point where we kind of had overspent, right? But what's amazing is today we're seeing a lot of like insurance and banks and manufacturer companies that are coming into cloud and beginning their migrations, or very early on, 5-10% of cloud migrations have been done so far. And they're actually making it a priority to set up their FinOps practices and get ahead of this and establish those capabilities really early on. This is an interesting a prediction by IDC that by 2023, 80% of enterprises will have a FinOps team, a FinOps practice in place. So the FinOps Foundation is a project to the Linux Foundation, so very similar to CNCF. I was initially an end user of the community, so I was volunteering, submitting best practices, helping with some of the curriculum, and I left corporate life because I really believe a lot in what this open source community is trying to do, and especially the mission behind it. The mission is very, very focused on like, how do we advance every individual that is managing cloud value? So that's from engineering, from the finance teams, from the FinOps practitioners, and help ensure we're getting them like really enriched connections through a community that's established, very similar to the cloud custodian community. We're giving them professional advancement so they can get the right training, education, so they can, upskill, become managers in this field. And then again, creating those resource libraries. Some of it is how do you do it? Some of it's why do you do it? Some of it is examples of where it's been implemented. And so any way that we can kind of help enrich this community, it will help us kind of fill what we're seeing as a big gap in skill sets right now. So I wanted to introduce you a little bit to the FinOps framework and where I think policy enforcement is just as much a FinOps concern as it really is a security concern. This is the FinOps framework. I'm not going to spend a lot of detail on it. We teach an entire course around it, but I do want to highlight a few elements in my next slide. So right away, I want to talk about these FinOps principles. The first one I'm going to highlight is that everyone takes ownership for their cloud usage. So when you hear that statement, I often get asked, well, if everyone takes ownership, then why should a centralized team write code and take actions on resources? So I get that, and that's why it's really important to look at the other two principles, which is teams need to collaborate and we need to make decisions that drive the value of cloud for the entire business. And so what we see is as FinOps teams really mature, they're going to pick up more responsibility for automating routine tasks. And there's a certain level of technical debt that's introduced with cloud. And I'll share an example a little bit here. And so the FinOps team might be empowered to fix this on their own. And what I would encourage from FinOps teams is make sure you have really established that credibility and you have that trust with your engineers so you can have those conversations on what are some of those repeatable patterns that need to be automated at scale. This concept of like enablement pattern is not a new concept. You will hear this considered a lot in security. It's definitely a shared responsibility model. And the FinOps team really aims to like propagate whatever are those repeatable patterns. So like the trends that they're seeing within different accounts, what are the outliers, and how do they really accelerate the whole organization by bringing some of those things that are happening on the edge and bringing a little bit more business oversight through some of the policy automation. Taking that a little bit further, these are their domain and capabilities. You can kind of think of domains, which is listed there in green. Those are the questions that the FinOps organization is being asked by the business to solve, and everything below it, the white, are the capabilities and how they actually do that. How do they solve those asks from the business? What I think is important is when you look at automating policy, that it's not just limited to a single capability. So I highlighted here all the areas that policy automation or notification really benefits all these capabilities. So for example, when we take something like Cloud Custodian and we enable being able to do tagging support with that, right? That is going to help with your data analyst and showback capability. When we enable policies such as like EC2 shutting down services on off hours, that's going to help with the resource utilization and efficiency capability. When we establish things like IAM policies to make sure the right people are spinning up resources in specific accounts, that's going to help you with your workload management. When we are doing notifications around like maybe this elastic IP has remain unused for X number of days, we want to send notification out to that product owner and that engineering team. That's a really great way to kind of double down on establishing that FinOps culture of awareness. So I just wanted to kind of give a few examples here to show that we often think about how to implement policy at scale with automation to support a lot of these different capabilities. And what we typically see kind of going back to this is we talk about crawl, walk, run, and maturity. And we are seeing a lot more of our mature enterprises doing this with automation. Initially, maybe starting with some visibility reports, but ultimately figuring a way to reduce that overhead through automation. So now I've told you a little bit about the FinOps framework. I wanted to talk about our State of FinOps survey that we do. So every year we put out the survey just to kind of figure out what our community is doing. We've got 700 plus community members. We ask them about 65 questions, and this allows us to better understand the trends and challenges that are going through. You can check out a lot more of this at data.finops.org. I'm only going to go over a couple data points here. So the first one that we asked folks is like, what was your top pain point that you're trying to tackle? And you can kind of see listed here, getting engineers to take action, accurately forecasting, getting the organization to adopt FinOps has still been very popular, reducing waste, and aligning teams. And so out of all of those things, you can see specifically I've highlighted two that tools like Cloud Custodian can really help drive the behavior through different notification and getting agreed upon actions with engineers. I think it's important to note, and I know our initial key spoker said this, that like, automation at scale, it is possible, it is difficult, but I would say getting agreement on policy sometimes is even more difficult than doing the actual automation. And so that's the other nice part about having a FinOps and a security team helping with your Cloud Custodian policies, is they can help navigate those conversations and get those agreements to be had. The other one I wanted to note a little bit more on is automation. What we're seeing is that automation is increasing. You can see from last year to this year, there was little to no automation, was about around 50% in 2021. People say we aren't there yet, we're not doing that. And then this last year, about 25% of folks said there's no automation happening in their FinOps practice. So that's exciting to us. That shows a sign of maturity. I think the other thing I wanted to kind of highlight here is the different areas that people are doing automation. And so they're doing it around resource utilization, instant right sizing, doing reports on cloud usage, doing reports on tagging hygiene, and also applying like data retention around storage life cycles. And these are all things that I know tools like Cloud Custodian can support and do. But it's also interesting to look at the other areas where people are automating, and I'm intrigued to see the roadmap that's coming for Cloud Custodian around kind of container security and how that will be leveraged by FinOps as well. I know there's talk about more notification elements around the set spend aspect too. The last kind of slide I want to show you on State of FinOps is just what we're seeing with tooling trending. So a couple things here. We're definitely seeing an uptick in native tools. They have really advanced in the last few years, so they seem to be fundamental. But depending on the enterprise's complexity, so their account structure, are they using multi-cloud? Are they trying to pull in other SaaS data? We are seeing a lot of SaaS tools gain traction. I think being part of the open source community, we're really excited to see more open tool adoption as well. Cloud Custodian ranked among the top half. And I think what is really apparent here is like there's no one tool that rules it all, right? And so we actually see an average of FinOps respondents say that they're using about 3.7 tools, and then really integrating those tools as well. Okay, that was a lot. I told you a little bit about how policy and automation really fit into the FinOps practice, and I showed you some trends in the community. So now I want to switch it over and just tell a little bit of a personal story for you. So I'm going to take you back again when I said I used to run a FinOps practice. And early on, I really needed to get some easy wins for a few reasons. I wanted to showcase that building a FinOps function was valuable to the organization. And I also needed headcount. And so being able to show some savings justification was my best way to pitch for some full-time recs to help me with this FinOps gig. And this is before, FinOps was the term that we were using for it. So what I knew, I reported with an infrastructure and operations team, and we had a cloud management team. They were already using Cloud Custodian for CISO policies. So we had a repetitive process on how to raise awareness and how to get approval for new policies. So I thought, like, why not use that to reduce, cloud spend? And so I'm just going to kind of quickly walk you all through that. So the first thing we always did when we wanted to run a new policy buy is we had to talk about, what is this thing? What is the impact if we did this? Who will be the decision makers of this policy? Who will it affect? We also wanted to do some baseline. So where are we at right now? What is the best KPIs for success when we implement this policy? How will the policy be communicated? So how will all the engineering teams know this is the new policy? Is it going to be something that's strictly notification, or is it going to be something that we're going to execute action on? And then also, can people opt out of it was a big question all the time as well. And, the other thing is, how are we going to make this super repetitive task automated? And so, we would lean on tools to do that. So let me give you the example. So I was looking at something one day. It's the S3 incomplete multi-upload transactions that were happening. And what I noticed at a macro level is that we were kind of wasting a lot of money on this. But the trend wasn't really slowing down, and it wasn't really one particular account that was causing the spend. It was a whole bunch of accounts. And so we sent out a few emails to the owners, but no real impact was made after those emails went out. So what we were able to do is bring this example to kind of our voting committee and talk about putting it as a Cloud Custodian policy. So again, where I was at, we had over 800 plus AWS accounts that were running, no lifecycle rule configured on S3 for the incomplete multi-uploads. We were spending about $11K per month on this. And again, no single account was exceeding more than 1K. So FinOps submitted the policy to our to our board that does Cloud Custodian, and it was voted to implement. And the decision was actually made that we would take action on this, so that after 14 days, we would just clean them up. We also allowed the ability to opt out. It's not common that people do, but it's always nice to have that option, right? And so then our cloud management team of engineers actually wrote the policy. So I think that's important to call out, because as a FinOps team, we didn't write the policy. We had a team of engineers that already had that skill set and were able to do that and bootstrap it, to all of the accounts. So what that immediately did, you can see that we actually turned it on about 2 weeks into the month. So we didn't kind of capitalize on all that savings that month. But initially, we felt like there was a 4K potential savings for just that month by enabling that. The next month, huge drop off. We never ever exceeded over $100 per month now on this. And so, this for us was a win. And then we have to think about the way that you report this. So can we go ahead and say we saved $70,000? Maybe saying the word saving wasn't the right approach. So we had discussed with our finance team that by doing this, we avoided this much spend. And so this was a good action to take. And now we have this in place, forever going forward. So I just wanted to kind of share this example. I think Cloud Custodian is a great way to put policies and get these easy wins, and you stack more of these easy wins, and that really helps, justify having some of this centralized governance as well. So I just want to leave you with thank you for letting me be here today. If you're interested in learning more about the FinOps movement, there's a couple ways you can get involved. So you can join. We've got a Slack channel. We actually have a big summit in 2 days that you can publicly join as well. If you want to learn more and get certified, you can go to learn.finops.org. We've got quite a few certifications that can be taken. We are launching a container certification in the next month. And then if you're interested in a FinOps job, we have a jobs board, and there's over 100 plus jobs that have been posted in the last 30 days. So definitely a growing field we're seeing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. I guess your one policy was worth 70K, right?
Yeah, it's an easy one.
Yeah, I know we have a bit of time for Q&A, so if there's any questions, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A tab. And yes, Kapil mentioned there's a pretty big cloud custodian channel on the FinOps Slack as well. I don't know, Ashley, if afterwards you can drop the link to the FinOps Slack. I know there's a process of joining that. Probably you can join it through the FinOps.org, right?
Yep, recommend just joining first there. I'll drop the link to it, and then you'll be have access to the Slack.
Yeah, just curious, while more questions come in, how many of you are members of the FinOps Foundation or were aware of the FinOps Foundation before? I do see some familiar names. I guess there's a question. What would you recommend a non-technical FinOps person? How does that person should start with some tool like Cloud Custodian?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think really look at a couple things like the trends that you're seeing going on, and like for me, for instance, cloud spend, and have those conversations with your engineers around what they think are should be best standards and practices, right? So just start as simple as like, what should we be doing with these EBS volumes? What should we be doing with these elastic IPs? And kind of get a sense of what everyone around you thinks should be happening, and see if you can find some trends in their responses. And so if they're saying, well, yeah, we shouldn't keep this long, or we should be automating this, like start jotting that stuff down, and then hopefully you can bring that up to like an engineering director and see if you can kind of get an agreement on writing some policies. That's always a great place to start as well. At least have it documented. And then I think moving into some reporting is really nice, so you can see what's happening, right? The baseline. And then you'll notice like my trend was like we had visibility and we communicated, but we still weren't really making any movement. And so at that point, you're going to probably have to, move into, formally putting policy in place at scale. You'll probably have some engineering teams that have, done stuff with policy before. So I would find out what tools that they are using as well, and if they've considered an open source type of tool before.
Yeah. I think people are saying they're a member of the foundation or are joining it soon, or they're aware now. So they will join soon, hopefully. Is there a link to the data you were showing? There was a question.
Yep. Maybe let me get that link for you. And we'll be doing this survey in another month, so I think we're changing the questions up a little bit as well. But you guys can check out all the data there.
I think it's data.finops.org, right?
And just for fun, because I work a lot with the enterprises, and some of our top 4 enterprises are hiring right now, I'll drop the job link too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know she dropped it in the events chat. I know it's a bit confusing. There's a stage chat and there's an event chat as well, but I'll copy them in the other one. Any other questions for Ashley?
All right. Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This data URL is lots of good stuff here. Thank you.